let's play this dude about John Wayne. Apparently, over the break, some stuff was revealed about John Wayne. Now, throughout the past 20 or 30 years, there's been a very vague, I think, sort of awareness that John Wayne was probably pretty retrograde type of guy. But apparently a new John Wayne Playboy interview has
it's not
resurfaced.
Entirely new. I heard about this before.
Okay.
The I believe in white supremacy quote.
Okay. So, I mean, it's been out there, but somehow it's resurfaced.
Yeah, Twitter got to it.
It's on social media. And
John
again,
Wayne is canceled.
I mean, in many respects, this is sort of like, mirrors the conversation about how, in March of 2016, you still had, Bernie had even trouble with name recognition at that time. Social media has changed the dynamic of how, what genuine public exposure means. So John Wayne's, I don't know if his legacy is being relitigated, but I think we see this from time to time, whether it's with classical, musicians or authors.
Probably going to see more of it from rock musicians, I think.
Really?
I think there's probably a lot of stories from the 70s and 80s that are waiting for memoirs.
But I mean, you see this with, reassessing, classical, works and, but so it comes out that John Wayne had some pretty racist views that he was holding. And Fox, for some, I don't know what possible reason. Sometimes you get the feeling that on Fox, they're just like, let's just see if we can do this. They're out there trying to defend these views in a really bizarre, and not only is their argument bizarre, but the idea that they want to have this argument is bizarre. I'm not even clear why.
They're wasting a bad argument.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're hurting it.
Says Indians were selfishly trying to keep this land, and he's glad we took it from them. And then he says this.
Pause it. I like how he just sort of skates over the Indians. They're trying to get us for taking their land, but then he says something really bad. Yeah, go back to the beginning again. This is from the Laura Ingraham show. And who's this guy?
Raymond Arroyo.
Yeah, they had to bring on a special correspondent to promulgate this opinion, because it was so bad.
Says Indians were selfishly trying to keep this land, and he's glad we took it from them. And then he says this. With a lot of blacks, there's quite a bit of resentment along with their dissent, and possibly rightfully so. But we can't all of a sudden get down on our knees and turn everything over to the leadership of the blacks. I believe in white supremacy, Duke said, until the blacks are educated to the point of responsibility. Now, Laura, what I don't like about both of these stories is we're judging the past in light of shifting moral, ethic, and cultural codes of today. We can't do that.
Well,
Pause it for 1 second. Now, some of you may think wow, when did he say this? In 1925? Did he say this in the late 1800s?
During the Reconstruction era?
Did he say this? Did he say this? What far off distant temporal plane did he say this? 1971. I was as old as my son. I could do addition at that time. My son is starting to read. And I'm not that old. In 1971, I got news for you. It was a fairly backwards racist position to say, we have to educate the blacks before we give them any type of leadership role. We're not going to get on our knees. And those Indians, they were so selfish for keeping all that land.
Was that 5 years after the Voting Rights Act?
This is 6 years after the Voting Rights Act. So this is the argument. This is the defense, that it's the past. You're judging the past based upon the standards of 1971. It's there was no cars at that time. There was no means of communication other than the Pony Express. It's absurd. But here they go. This is what we mean by they're ruining a good argument. I don't think it's a great argument, but it's at least an argument, right? Like, I mean, yeah, it's hard to judge maybe the actions of, like, bigotry in, 1800s, 1700s. But
Can't do that.
Well,
You just
they're
can't.
either defacing statues or pulling them down.
Yeah.
So, and I've said this before, I'm going to keep saying this. This is what the Taliban does. The Taliban used to rip down historical markers, destroy churches. ISIS did the same thing, does the same thing. They don't want any vestige of what was.
Well,
even if it's bad, they don't want any vestige. Even if it's good, they don't want anything.
But these are two iconic images of America.
Right.
John Wayne and the sailor, the release, freedom. They're impugning
America.
Left. They're impugning America. And if you want to settle a racist score, if you
pause
want
it.
to
Wait a second before we go into this next part. What are they talking about? Tearing down statues? Like, John Wayne, no one's trying to get John Wayne fired from a job because John Wayne is dead. And it's not like, and there is a material difference between being lauded because of your work in trying to maintain slavery versus someone being criticized because in their personal life they are racist.
They're tearing down the statue of his reputation.
Well, that's the thing, is that there's nobody's tearing down his statue anyway. I mean, I'm sure there's a couple of John Wayne statues. I think the Burbank Airport, and I don't know if I would be like, you got to unname the Burbank Airport, because the reasons why he was, deemed worthy of an airport name really were not founded on his personal bigotry. Maybe on the structural bigotry, but not his personal bigotry. But there's to somehow squeeze this in to, like, this is like tearing down the statue of a general who fought and it led an insurrection so that they could keep humans as basically pets.
Or like ISIS destroying statues. Like ISIS found problematic. Like, this mosque is problematic, so we need to...
super problematic.
Well, they're running on empty, All they have is this culture war bullshit.
That's true. But here is, and this is the way they call it. It's the pathetic culture war. It's their culture war. Yeah. And here is this guy trying to say that, like, you're judging on the past. And here he is going to walk into, if you listen carefully, he is going to be guilty of essentially like the same type of racism that we heard from, in some respects, from John Wayne.
These are two iconic images of America. John Wayne and the sailor, the release, freedom. They're impugning America. They're impugning America. And if you want to settle a racist score, if you want to go settle scores, talk to Jussie Smollett. Go talk to the governor and lieutenant governor of Virginia. They got plenty of scores to settle there.
Pause it now. Now, here's what's interesting about that. If you want to settle a racist score, and I'm not 100% sure I know what that means, but he cites that Jussie Smollett. Now, and I will be honest, I had no idea who this dude was. I hadn't even heard the story, and granted, we were on vacation. I hadn't even heard the story until it was debunked. And I'm not even sure I know what the story is now, except for he claims that he was attacked by some Trump supporters, and they made that it was a racist hate crime. And it turns out that it was not, and he wanted to fight them, and maybe had Munchausen syndrome or whatever. So I get like, if you want to settle a racist score, go talk to the guy who fabricated it. But then he says, the lieutenant governor of Virginia, and race is not a part at all of that guy's controversy. He is accused by at least two women of sexual, unwanted sexual advances, in one case, sexual assault, and the other, I think, rape. But it has nothing to do with race. It just so happens that he's black. And so this guy just immediately says, like, well, if you want to talk about, settling racial scores, let me just pick two black guys. One who has, sort of on point, but just another guy who's just sort of in the news.
He's possibly a rapist. So
yeah.
Be afraid about that.
But that is their pathetic culture war, as it were.
Yeah, they named it very accurately. So thanks, guys.
They were super accurate.
This, but unironically.